Floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We congratulate you and our Chinese colleagues on assuming the presidency of the Security Council. You can always rely on the support of our delegation. We thank Belgium as well for its presidency. It was a short month, but a very busy and intensive one. We thank the Special Representative of the Secretary-General, Ms. Hennis Plaschert, for her briefing. We support the work of the UN Assistance Mission in Iraq, whose work has been able to provide useful assistance to reconciliation processes with respect for the country's sovereignty. We are closely monitoring developments in Iraq. On the 1st of March, as we know, the Prime Minister-designate Mohammed Alawi withdrew his candidacy to form a government, and the President of the Republic, Barham Saleh, now has, in consultation with leading political forces, to determine a new candidate for head of government. And we trust that this process will take place in a timely manner in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. We understand that Iraq's leadership faces the difficult task of including and taking into account the entire spectrum of the political, social, and ethno-religious landscape of the country. We are convinced that an inclusive dialogue is what will help to overcome the internal disagreements in Iraq, which is something that is fundamentally important for the entire Middle East region. For our part, in our contacts with all of the political forces in Iraq, we encourage them to pool their efforts to address all of the issues on the domestic agenda and to reach mutually acceptable agreements. The country is continuing to see mass protest with demands for political and socio-economic reforms. As we have heard from Iraqi officials, the authorities see these protests as a form of democratic self-expression and are committed to their obligations to ensure freedom of peaceful assembly. We note a drop in the level of violence, and we pay tribute to the law and order agencies, and we call for all parties to continue to show restraint. At the same time, we believe it is unacceptable for outside forces to use the protests as a lever to exercise pressure on the domestic situation. Mr. President, the authorities are coming up with plans to implement reforms. However, without a stably functioning government, this won't be possible. And the same goes for solving the large swathe of problems that have built up over the years that have been caused by objective reasons. Iraq has to rebuild after the events of 2003 and the subsequent arduous war with terrorists. It's important for the international community to support Baghdad in coming up with comprehensive measures to rebuild the economy and improve the social sphere. We take a positive view of the continuation of dialogue over rebuilding mutual understanding between Baghdad and Erbil. We're confident that a further improvement of relations between them will help Iraq strengthen its security and also effectively deploy its economic potential for the good of the entire Iraqi people. We note with concern the remaining high terrorist threat in the country. The situation is compounded by an intensification in the number of ISIL terrorists slipping over from Syria into Iraq, and we are convinced that effectively countering this challenge can only be done through the broadest possible coordination of counterterrorism efforts. At the same time, we believe it is necessary that all those involved in the fight against terrorism in Iraq support the sovereignty of the Iraqi state and coordinate their actions with Baghdad. Mr. President, we are concerned by the possible negative impact on the domestic political situation in Iraq of the artificially whipped-up situation surrounding Iran. Iraq cannot be dragged into a regional confrontation, and we repeat our consistent refrain. Iraq cannot become an arena for the settling of geopolitical scores. The country has the right to build and develop normal relations with its neighbors, and nobody has a right to undermine those relations. We have all witnessed the dangerous escalation at the beginning of the year when the region found itself almost on the brink of conflict as a result of the illegal killing by the United States in Baghdad of the Iranian military commander Qasem Soleimani and Iraqi officials. This act undermines the stability and security of a sovereign UN member state that was committed without its knowledge. Mr. President, once again, we stress the need to launch dialogue mechanisms in the region instead of sanctions and threats. In this connection, once again, we would like to recall that the UN Secretary-General has a mandate to come up with security and confidence-building measures in the region in accordance with Security Council Resolution 598. We stand ready for cooperation on this basis with all interested regional and international partners within the framework of our proposed concept for collective security in the Persian Gulf area and also other constructive initiatives. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement.